Tribe, Book 2, Todd Mills Mystery. Author, R.D. Zimmerman. Publisher, Scrib Pub, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 37. So that's how the police see it, Janice said as she finished relating to Zeb the trouble he was now in. You're the only person that any of the neighbors saw at the minister's house, which makes you, of course, their prime suspect. But I didn't hurt anyone. Of course not. In the distant background, an old disco song pounded on and on as a half-dozen drag queens went through their dress rehearsal on the stage of the showroom. Here in Jeff's dressing room, however, the atmosphere was far more serious. As Janice and Zeb discussed the most recent events, it was a small room with a rack of gowns on one wall, feathers and wigs scattered all over another, and a makeup table covered with cosmetics and brushes off to one side. Janice sat on an old, drooping love seat, the baby Ripka cradled in her arms. Just maybe, she thought, everything was going to be all right. Just maybe the intensity of the last few days would begin to back down. She brushed her hand through Ripka's dark curls, then looked up at Zeb, who sat at Jeff's dressing table. I think we finally got things under control. But it was that guy, Paul. It had to be him. He must have attacked the minister out in the garage. Or, I don't know, something like that. I'm sure it was. If nothing else, though, you're a witness, and I'm afraid you're going to have to talk with the police at some point. You mean down at the police station? She shook her head. I don't think so. We might be able to avoid that. You remember Todd and Rollins, the ones who were out at the hospital? Yeah, said Zeb meekly. Rollins is a cop. He's going to come over here, if that's okay. He just wants to talk and see how much he can get straightened out. Is that all right? I guess. When? Actually, he's on his way over now. The sooner we deal with this, the better. Janice went on to tell him how she, as a lawyer, thought this was the best way, the easiest. If they could keep it nice and simple, if Zeb could tell them everything he knew, then this might be over within a few hours. Not only might the authorities be able to apprehend whoever attacked the minister, Zeb might no longer have anyone pursuing him. He shrugged. You don't know my dad. Oh, but I do, thought Janice. She bent over, kissed Ripka on the forehead. Oh, but I do. Zeb, we've got a lot to talk about, began Janice. There's a lot you don't know, and a lot I'd like to. The door quickly opened, and Janice looked up, expecting to see Jeff swirl into the room, draped in a shimmering gold gown. Instead, two men burst in, both of them quite familiar, and one of them holding a pistol. Dad! Shouted Zeb, jumping to his feet. Speak of the devil, said Janice, clutching Ripka against her chest. What the hell are you two doing here? I'm afraid this is what it's come down to, said Rick, his voice stern and authoritative. Now, my son, I'm afraid your little escapade is over. It's time to come back home. We've all been terribly worried about you, especially your young wife, and it's time to return to the congregation. But, no, the decision has been made. Zeb ran one hand over his short hair. But Ripka, she's sick. She needs medicine. Ripka will be fine. She just needs your faith. Oh, cut the crap, will you? Snapped Janice. She has a bad ear infection, that's all. Oh, ye of little faith. Rick stepped toward her and reached out. Give me the child. You can't do this, she said, cowering back in the old love seat. Just watch. Janice's mind whipped through a flip chart of possible excuses, lies. She tried to conjure up some lordly trick. If only she could stall them, delay them in some way. Paul, she said, do you know the police have a warrant out for your arrest? The large man grinned. Oh, really? For murder. His face became serious. What? You attacked someone, a minister who's in the hospital and may die. I thought one of the commandments, one of the biggies was, thou shalt not kill. Don't listen to her, Paul. She's being ridiculous, interrupted Rick. Just give me the child and we'll be gone. Right, Zeb? No way! I'm not going back to that funny farm, Janice said. The police are on the way here. Right, replied Zeb. A cop's coming over to talk to me. If they're on the way, then I guess we'll have to hurry. Paul raised the gun, started to step forward. Do like he says, lady, and give him the baby. Like hell I will. You murderer? Janice clutched her granddaughter, sank back. There was no way she was giving up Ripka. Not again. Fine, snapped Rick impatiently. Then we'll have to take all of you. Paul, you get the boy. Paul lunged across the room, grabbing Zeb and twisting his arm behind his back. Zeb bucked, tried to pull away, but then his face collapsed in a wave of pain. Leave him alone, shouted Janice, rising to her feet. Zeb, my son, you really must start behaving. Please, I implore you, do as your elders tell you. Rick reached out for Janice. Now come with me. No one's going to get hurt as long as you do as you're told. Please, Janice, just stay nice and calm. Our car is right outside. Oh, great, quipped Janice, realizing she had no choice. Road trips with you have always been a barrel of fun. I don't get it, said Zeb as Paul pushed him out the door. How did you find us down here? Paul replied. God the Father showed us the way. Bullshit, said Todd, stepping into one end of their long, narrow hallway and blocking their exit. They had Janice's phone bugged. Rick paused for a second and then jerked Janice, who was clutching Ripka, in front of him. Todd couldn't tell how immediately dangerous the situation was, but recognized the guy behind Rick as the one with whom he'd fought at Janice's house. Todd's eyes flashed over Zeb for the first time, and he felt a jolt. Rick said, Too bad you didn't figure that out sooner. Now get out of our way, like I told you before. This is a family matter. Of course it is. That's why I'm here. Move before Paul is forced to shoot you. Oh, I wouldn't do that, called Rollins from the opposite end of the hall where he stood, a gun trained on Paul. Todd's special, if you know what I mean. I don't think you want to hurt him. A few silent seconds crept by, and Todd hoped this battle was already won, but then he watched as Rick grabbed the gun from Paul and placed it against Janice's temple, her grasp on Ripka firm and secure. Janice's body went rigid, and Todd could see the panic sweep across her face. Dad, no! Screamed Zeb. Shut up, Zeb! Rick glanced at Rollins, then at Todd. You let us go, or I'll shoot her. Dad, stop it! The desperation clear on his face, Rick dragged Janice toward a door and shouted, Come on, Paul! Zeb twisted and bucked in Paul's grip, but then they started down a side hall. The Gay Times was a labyrinthine place, complete with everything from a piano parlor to a pool hall, and while Todd knew the main parts pretty well, he had only a vague idea of the dressing room and stage areas. He was pretty sure he could cut them off, though, and he dashed down another hall and into a room which was full of stacks of chairs, but no other way out. He retreated, found another door through which he tore the music from the show room, blared away, louder and louder, and Todd only hoped he'd find some way to circle around and cut them off. He came around a corner, and this tall, skinny thing in a green, sparkling dress crashed right into him. One of the drag queens, Todd realized a black man, sleek, elegant, and struggling to maintain her balance on her tall spike heels. Did you see a guy with a gun? Demanded Todd. You bet your sweet ass I did, said the queen, straightening her long black wig, then pointing up a few steps. You go right up that way, doll, and you'll get a bullet right through your heart. I'm sure of it. Thanks. Oh, a real hero. I think I'm going to cry. Todd bounded up the short staircase and found himself backstage, a cavernous black space full of ropes and a few paltry pieces of scenery. As the music blasted away, Todd cut around, emerging on the far edge of the stage on which his friend Jeff, a la Tiffany Crystal, was prancing and dragging around to the sounds of Deanna Ross. And there, emerging from the other side, were Paul, Zeb, Janice, and Rick, the gun still at Janice's head. All at once, the music stopped, and Tiffany was left mid-swoop, mid-song, and as awkward as a lumberjack in a skirt. Hey, you bonehead, she called to the technician in the back as she straightened up. I got a song in my heart, but no music in my throat. What's up? His voice low, Todd said, Get out of here, Jeff. She turned around, her gold gown glimmering in the lights. Why, hello there, big boy. Come to sing a duet with me? From the opposite end of the stage, Janice, her voice trembling, said, "Do as he says, Jeff." Tiffany Crystal turned around further, saw the full situation. "Oh, fuck. I mean, oh my word." And with that, she went scurrying down the front steps and into the tables, which were clustered at the base of the stage. Todd took a step forward, hesitated. What could he do? How could he stop this? "Pat, or Rick, you've got to realize that Zeb doesn't want to go with you, and if his daughter is sick, then how she's treated is his decision." "Get out of our way, Todd." Clearly that tack wasn't going to work. Think, he told himself, figure something out. Glancing to the side, he saw Rollins enter the room, and Todd held up his hand, motioned for him not to come up any closer. "You used to be a pretty nice guy, Rick. We were friends, remember?" ventured Todd. "I don't know what it was, but there was something kind of charming about you. You were full of life, full of energy." From out in the dark audience, a woman's voice called. "Fragile, too, wasn't he?" Todd peered out into the darkness and saw a blonde woman leaning against a column. "There was something about him," she said, "that just made me want to take him in my arms and tell him everything would be all right." Zeb tried to pull away from Paul, but couldn't, and he shouted, "Mom!" "For God's sake, Martha," snapped Rick. "What the hell are you doing here?" What kind of mother wouldn't come to help her boy and granddaughter? Desperate to find and see Zeb, Martha had flown up here, and it had been she who had made the emergency call to Janice's office. Using Todd's car phone as they headed downtown, Janice had then called her at the Holiday Inn. After getting Rollins, Todd had swung by and picked her up as well. "Do you remember him back then? So pretty, so young looking?" she asked. "Sure I do," said Todd. "You could look him right in the eye, see a person who knew right from wrong." "Exactly," Martha continued. "I'd been living at the ranch, the communal one, for almost 2 months when he came, and I think I fell in love with him that first night he was there." She'd been sitting on the back porch steps, staring up at the stars, when she heard the screen door squeak open. "Hi," said Martha, her long blonde hair swishing as she turned around and saw him. Pat, the guy who just arrived that afternoon. "Isn't it beautiful? I mean, it's just so clear. All you have to do is look up and see all those stars, and you know that's where Jehovah and all the angels live." She wrapped her arms around her knees. "Maybe this sounds awful, but sometimes I just can't wait to get up there, to be with him. Won't it be wonderful?" "Probably, but I'll never get to heaven." "Don't be silly." She scooted over. "Come here and sit down next to me. Hold my hand, otherwise I might just turn into an angel and fly away right now." "I mean it." Pat sat down hesitantly, took her hand, and then looked upward at that great promised place. "I'll never get there. I'm going to hell." "Hey, don't talk like that." "But I'm bad. You know, evil." "Then you come to the right place. If you give yourself to God, then you'll find love and happiness. That's what we're doing here, in this house, coming together in love." She glanced over at him, saw tears welling in his eyes, and so she couldn't stop herself. He needed help. He needed a true friend, and he was in pain. Pain that was honest and sincere. She leaned over, kissed him on the cheek. He blurted, I had sex with another guy." It took her by surprise, and at first she didn't know what to say. She didn't even know him. They hadn't even spoken 5 words before this, but she'd never seen someone open so quickly, so deeply. "We all make mistakes," said Martha. "God the Father is infinite in his mercy." Then a few days ago I wasn't very nice to a friend of mine, a girl. We were in a motel. I was drunk. I made her have sex with me." She squeezed his hand. "You don't need to tell me this. You need to. But I want to. I have to. I have to tell someone at least. You need to find God the Father and tell him. We can help you find him. All of us can. Don't worry. It's too late. Something worse happened. Something at college. I need to turn myself into the police. I did something horrible. I need to tell the authorities." "No, silly," she said, amazed at his agony. "You don't need to tell anyone but God." "But you don't understand." "Of course I do. I understand that the police can't help you, and I understand that God can." She glanced upward at the dark sky. Look, a falling star. It's a sign, Pat. A sign for you to reach out to heaven." "What happened was horrible. Shh." Whatever it was is between you and God. Find Him, and you'll find eternal love and forgiveness. Do you remember that night, Rick? Said Martha, wiping tears from her own eyes. You just started weeping, sobbing, and I thought I'd never seen anything so pure, so honest. That was the man I fell in love with. That young man who was drowning in a sea of despair, who was reaching out to me. Stop it, Martha, snapped Rick. And that's when I grew to loathe about you. After that night, you never really gave yourself to God or anyone else, particularly me. Whatever was burning inside you never turned into love. No, gradually, bit by bit, it just turned bitter, and over time it turned into hate, didn't it? Now's not the time for this kind of nonsense. Suddenly it was all so clear, thought Todd, staring across the stage at Rick. He understood. What had happened so long ago had kept Todd in the closet for years. Rick, on the other hand, had hidden elsewhere. You didn't join that church to find God or to be sexually rehabilitated or anything like that, did you? Said Todd. Hell no. That's not what you've been hiding from, is it? Spare me your accusations. It was just like you said. You didn't see anyone else on that fire escape, did you? Of course not. You didn't see anyone else because, of course, it was you out there. You got that window open, didn't you? Somehow you went out on that fire escape. God's wisdom is all-encompassing. It was you out there with Greg. I saw you, didn't I? And what did you do? Push Greg? Is that the truth you wanted to confess to Martha? That you killed someone? Rick stared at him, hesitated, then blurted, You were the coward, not me. At least I didn't run away. He ran to the window. What a bastard, that Greg. He'd tell the entire fucking fraternity, and Pat reached for the window, tried to pull it upward, but it didn't budge. Todd, I can't get the window open. Help me. When Pat turned around, though, Todd wasn't right there. He was standing in the doorway, ready to run. Their eyes met, the terror mutual. But instead of coming to his aid, Todd turned and fled. Vanished just like that. Todd was gone. He'd fled, abandoned him for an instant. Pat just stood there, overwhelmed with shock. He'd never felt so alone in his life. Then he turned, saw Greg laughing out on the fire escape, pointing at him, mouthing the word, faggot. Something in Pat exploded, burst. He grabbed the window, gritted his teeth, gathered strength he didn't know he had, and shoved it upward. The cold air flooded in, constricting around his nearly naked body. Greg stood out there on the black metal fire escape, laughing and pointing a cigarette in one hand. I was just out there having a smoke when I thought I heard something in your room. It was pretty dark in there, so I took a peek, and what do I see but a couple of faggots? He laughed. Man, wait till I tell the guys about this. You and Todd. Holy shit. We're gonna have us a weenie roast. I always thought you were queer. I always knew you didn't belong in our fraternity. But Todd, wow, wait till the guys hear about this. Fuck you, said Todd, scrambling out on the window in his underwear. Oh, help me, a sissy. Pat swung, but Greg was quicker and quite a bit stronger, a star hockey player in the peak of fitness. He flicked his cigarette into the air, then caught Pat by the wrist. Just like that. Just that quickly. Not releasing Pat, Greg softly, gently taunted. Faggot! Pat wasn't going to take this, no. And summoning his strength a second time, Pat twisted his body in an attempt to jerk his arm free. That was when it happened. Greg lost his balance. That was all. The fire escape was so narrow, so flimsy. He started to fall back, and he reached out, grabbed for something, anything. Found nothing. Greg tried to catch himself, but the railing was low, and when he went over, he only managed to grab on with one hand. Help me! Greg pleaded, hanging desperately from the grating. Towering above him, Pat looked down at Greg's fingers as they clutched the slippery metal and then said, Fuck off. Okay, so I went out there, said Rick calmly, but Greg fell. Todd stared at him and knew the truth. Bullshit. You pushed him. You killed him, didn't you? That's the truth. That's been eating you all these years. Paul demanded. What's he saying, Rick? Nothing. Nothing at all, he shouted, pressing the gun against Janice's temple. I'm saying you killed someone, said Todd. Or at the very least, you contributed to his death. You're filled with the devil, Todd Mills, you sodomite, Todd said calmly. There are just some things that can never be cleansed, namely the truth. Suddenly, Ripka started to cry, and Zeb said, Dad, please let Janice go. We have to leave. We have to get out of here. Get back to the congregation where we'll be safe. Dad, please. Rick, the baby, begged Janice. At least let Zeb take her. Paul released Zeb and stepped forward. Give me the gun, Rick. What? But Paul, This isn't right, continued Paul. Quite abruptly, a high voice shouted out from the back. Why does everyone always treat me like a dog? God almighty, thundered Rick. I told you to stay in the car, Suzanne. That's exactly what I mean. I'm supposed to wait in the car like a good dog, and here all of you are, up here in this bar, every one of you, including my baby. Shocked, Zeb looked out, then in a small voice said, Hi, Suzanne. Oh, Zeb, are you all right? He nodded. And Ripka? Still tight in Rick's grip, Janice asked, Please, Rick, just let me give the baby to her mother. No! Rick, began Paul. Don't come any closer, Paul. All of you, just stay where you are. Anyone touches me, and I'll kill her, he shouted, pressing the barrel firmly against Janice's head. Todd could barely breathe. He saw the pistol buried against Janice's head, saw the fear strip her face of any color. Sweat burst across Todd's brow. He glanced sideways, saw Rollins out on the main floor, tense and ready to dart forward, but they were too far away. There was nothing they could do. This is not God the Father's way, said Paul. Shut up! You've strayed, Rick. You no longer stand on the promises. How dare you? Give me the gun. Maybe he'd really do it. Maybe he'd really shoot. And Todd's voice, little more than a whisper, said, Wait, You pull that trigger, Rick, continued Paul, and you will have the wrath of the Lord upon you. Stop. No. I'll shoot her. Then we'll know where Satan truly lurks. Stop it. Just stop it, shouted Suzanne, running forward and reaching into her bag and pulling out a pistol of her own. Anybody hurts my baby and I'll kill him. Swinging his gun at her, Rick yelled, You ignorant slut! Dad, no, cried Zeb, lunging forward, but it was too late. Rick took aim at Suzanne and squeezed the trigger. Todd flinched, expected a blast. There was, however, none. Rick pulled the trigger again and again. Still not a single bullet fired, and Rick was paralyzed. Paul calmly said, I've never had it loaded. Never. You fool! Rick threw Janice and Ripka aside and darted toward the edge of the stage, rushing at Suzanne and her gun. Don't! Shouted Suzanne. Don't! Stay back! Charging her, he leapt off the stage. Suzanne focused the gun right on him and fired. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.